Let's get it on. We've got a sustainable investment dialogue now. Is Bitcoin mining a challenge or an opportunity for decarbonization? Elliot David, head of climate strategy at Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol, joins me, as does Chris Ruppel, director of energy harvesting, Marathon Digital Holdings. Gentlemen, come up. Come on. Let's get some energy. Come and sit here. No, to my right, yeah. It's too weird being in the middle. It means I have to look left, look right, but that's better. Good to see you, Chris. Good to see you, Elliot, as well. So, Chris, we had a bit of Mara earlier, Marathon, as it's known, but we're going to delve deeper into Bitcoin mining. We've got a bit more time, and into the Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol. But let's start with you, Chris. You're not just a mining company. You are aiming to help with the energy transition. You're supporting the energy transition. How does Mara approach your use of energy and energy choices?
Sure. So, first off, I'm an energy person. I've spent more than 3 decades in the power sector and on project finance and also in operations. And so Mara realizes that Bitcoin really, because it is a form of distributed load, which I can't stress that enough. So, I've spent 30 years mostly doing distributed generation, which, whether it's solar or wind or combined heat and power, is being able to, push the generation out to a periphery area. But what you really have now with Bitcoin mining is the ability to bring load and the demand, right, and the supply together. So what's unusual here is that if you look at it, for 120 years, the whole history of all energy markets has been bring the energy to the market. Pipelines being built, power transmission lines being built, rail cars and rail lines being built to move coal. It was all about bringing the energy, right, to the market. With Bitcoin, you have the ability to bring the market to the energy. We can pull up and park our facilities next to an underutilized hydro facility somewhere in Africa. We can pull and bring our demand next to a wind farm somewhere in Nebraska. So the great thing about this is it begins to disarticulate, which is one of the biggest problems of revolutionizing the energy market, is to be able to really fully utilize all of these renewable distributed sources at the source and fully monetize them.
Your title is Director of Energy Harvesting. So for those not in the know, and I'm sure there are many,
including me.
Yeah. Explain what this energy harvesting is and why it matters.
Sure. So the idea of energy harvesting is the idea to be able to go into and to fully utilize what are otherwise wasted or stranded energy assets. So it could be a stranded hydro asset where they have the hydropower, but they didn't build sufficient transmission, and that's a real challenge in developing countries. Or it's the ability to go into, let's just say, the food industry, whether it be a distillery or something, and to be able to build a biogas plant. So it's being able to use what is otherwise stranded and or wasted energy.
Yeah. Explain to our audience, Chris, you say that it sounds like you're easily mobile. You can go where the energy is. Explain how that works, how easy it is to do, because some might not be familiar with that concept.
So for me, that was the kind of the light bulb moment when I, having spent all these decades, and my father was also in energy, to realize that Bitcoin was able to bring a massive amount of monetization capability directly to where the energy is produced. So if you have a stranded hydro facility that has 300 or 400 megawatts of hydropower that is not being utilized, okay, to build an equivalent amount of industrial capacity, a smelter or an auto plant, would take you literally more than a decade or decades to be able to do that, if you could ever persuade bankers to agree to the risk level. On the other hand, Bitcoin can come in and can rapidly deploy 100, 200, 300 megawatts of monetizing load within a period of 12 months, so that you're able to make full use of that renewable power so that it can pay for the build out of the transmission grid, so it can build more renewable power. To me, that's absolutely revolutionary.
And Bitcoin and revolutionary, they're two words that are used together in many instances. Elliot, let's bring you in. You're champing at the bit. You should be. How can Bitcoin mining solve some of the energy transition challenges?
Sure, and obviously there's plenty of challenges to be had. Maybe just to touch on the waste component, right? The sort of energy harvesting stranded assets component, to continue that line of reasoning. About 2/3 of global energy that's produced is wasted, right? And as Chris pointed out, you can bring the customer to the generator for the first time ever. This is predominantly happening in cases with renewable energy, obviously intermittent sources like solar and wind, or even baseload sources. You want a reliable off-taker to make them more bankable. Bitcoin mining can kind of serve that purpose. Again, it's connecting this supply and demand mismatch that we've had for so long. I do think that if we're going to evaluate the technology appropriately, we should just recognize it for what it is. It is a data center just like AI that has a few of these unique characteristics, such as portability, flexibility, but it's one of the tools in the toolbox. So I think it's going to solve every single problem? Probably not, but we should evaluate the technology for its merits and its demerits.
What about some of the negative consequences? Because as we showed from our stick your hands up earlier moment, many do equate Bitcoin, and let's put Bitcoin mining into that, as not very sustainable. So what are, Elliot, being honest, what are some of the negative environmental consequences of Bitcoin mining?
Sure. No industry is perfect. I think if you talk to folks in the industry, they'll recognize that it's not perfect. It is using increasingly higher amounts of renewable energy. It's solving all of these demand and supply challenges. But at the end of the day, all it is a data center that's going to find the cheapest possible electricity that has tons of very positive implications for the energy transition. But if, say, you're a coal operator and you have a stranded fossil asset that you want to keep online, in theory, this is a way to do that. What we're trying to do at SBP, though, is to say, let's not just have miners pursue the cheapest possible power, but let's price in the environmental benefits of renewables. So what we actually do is we verify and incentivize the use of clean energy in Bitcoin mining. So basically trying to address that potential problem down the road. Again, this is, the industry is so young, it's barely bar mitzvahed. I think Bitcoin mining has been around industrial Bitcoin mining has been around for about 13, 14 years. So there's still a lot of growing pains, but the fact that this is one of the fastest decarbonizing industries in the history of the world is, I think, very impressive.
How do your mining centers, Chris, differ from traditional data centers or those which we hear a lot about running AI? And actually, many Bitcoin miners are pivoting into AI, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Some, I wouldn't say many, some are. Some. What's the difference?
It's a sea change of a difference. So an AI data center is what I would call a peak load facility. So just so you all know here, there's a crisis in the United States like we have not had in over 100 years. We do not have enough power capacity. And I just want to walk you through. Capacity is everything. The PJM auction, which is 20% of our population, 30% of our economy, had a 4x increase. And there's going to be 20 to 30% higher power prices for everyone living in that whole belt of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Northern Virginia, Delaware, out into Ohio, because we don't have enough generation capacity. There's a crisis. And the crisis is that by generation capacity, it's Latin for really, can you hit the peak? Because the goal of utilities and the goal of power, right, is to be able to turn on 100% of the time. I don't know about you, but I view electricity as an essential service, like water, like sewer, like fire, like police. And by the way, one of the challenges of solar and wind is in the PJM auction, wind and solar only contributed 2% of capacity. And I don't know about you, but I would not want my police only showing up 2% of the time, my fire showing up 2% of the time. So that's something that as an industry we all have to deal with. And I've been in the environmental industry and power side for 30 years. Okay? That's a big challenge. But the big difference between us and AI is that AI, you can't turn them off at all. If you bring AI into a system, you are raising the peak. If you are raising the peak, it means all the ratepayers are going to have to pay more to build more capacity. And I don't know about you, but capacity today to build that nuclear plant or that coal plant, well, you won't build that, you build a gas plant, is going to be 4x, 5x, 10x what it was 20 and 25 years ago. That's going to be a regressive taxation on all the ratepayers. Bitcoin does not do that. Bitcoin uses the excess power that is in the grid. We can be demand responsed. We can be dispatched. So when the peak is occurring on a 100-degree day, we can shut down. And that is a night and day difference. It is literally a $5 trillion cost difference to ratepayers.
If I could just sort of expand upon that, maybe a helpful analogy would be to say that, and I'm taking this from somebody else I heard it from, but the increase in AI computing is almost like a locust, right? You need these 100% uptimes. They're going to increase the load, but not in a way that is flexible and responsive. Whereas Bitcoin mining is almost like a dung beetle, right? It's only going to go after these cheap and wasted energy. The fact that Bitcoin mining is so price sensitive is actually really important to this conversation, because otherwise you would say, okay, Bitcoin's going to go up. They're just going to keep on gobbling more and more and more power. But in reality, as soon as Bitcoin mining has to compete with you and me or AI companies or industry, they're extremely price sensitive. They're going to shut down, and that power is going to be available for other consumers. So I think that's a really key point that, when I talk to lawmakers or environmental NGOs or academia, that often gets lost, is that price sensitivity is also important to think about. What does Bitcoin mining look like in the future as the load growth continues?
Well, why are some miners pivoting to AI? And I've noticed their share prices have popped as a result. I know it's all the fad NVIDIA, anything AI linked, it's sexy, and people understand it and they jump on it. Do you feel it's are you disappointed that miners would pivot?
Not disappointed, it's just I would say I'm not surprised.
Right.
And that's because I think that it's not so much a push as a pull. So data centers are desperate for power, right? I mean, the actual numbers are mind-blowing in the amount of power that they require, right? So Moore's Law ended, whether you want to say 2016 or 17, and so it is truly exponential growth. So very much the AI data centers are looking for sites that are actual, data center sites, which is what a Bitcoin mining operation is, where they'd be able to bring in machines and be able to utilize that power. So it's really, I think it's a kind of a natural pull by the AI data center demand.
Yeah. Elliot, let's cut to the chase. Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. Ethereum, the number 2 crypto, used to, but it changed. It changed its protocol, proof of stake from proof of work. For those not in the know, this is your job explaining what proof of work is, why Bitcoin's proof of work, why it needs and why it does use the energy, and why it isn't or probably ever moved to a different proof of stake.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's probably the most important question to ask at the beginning of a conversation like this, because for the folks who raised their hands before who feel that Bitcoin is really dirty or it's really unsustainable, if you think that Bitcoin itself has no value, has zero value, then even a kilowatt hour of electricity used to produce Bitcoin, whether it's green or not, is a waste, right? If I'm not a fan of rubber ducks and somebody's using electricity to make rubber ducks, to me that's a waste. So what is the value of Bitcoin, and why does it use a lot of this energy? So the major difference between Bitcoin and proof of work, as opposed to Ethereum, proof of stake, and other cryptocurrencies, is that Bitcoin is completely decentralized and completely secure. So the reason why this magic internet money is able to have this global ledger and have you're able to trade with anybody on the planet as long as you have internet connection, is because you have this global network of computers that are constantly running And instead of securing your selfies on the cloud or running Amazon Web Services, all they're doing is constantly securing and validating the Bitcoin network. So a company like Marathon, all they're doing when they're running these computers is they are constantly securing the global Bitcoin network. Now, in my conversations with a lot of environmental experts, NGOs, climate justice communities, they wonder, why don't we just switch Bitcoin to proof of stake or to one of these less energy intensive chains? Objectively, it's less energy intensive. The important thing to remember is, what are you getting for that energy? So again, Bitcoin is can't be corrupted. The reason why some of the biggest financial institutions in the world are now starting to adopt Bitcoin, why companies are starting to add it to their treasuries for treasury management, it's because it's this globally decentralized secure network that's completely incorruptible. It's never had a downtime. There's never been a hack. Other cryptocurrencies, while having values, in my opinion, in their own right, they just don't serve this same store of value, digital gold value proposition.
Just talk me through, Chris, some challenges. What are the biggest challenges that you and your competitors face when it comes to decarbonization and climate finance?
Sure. So I think it's really a question of being able to find what are the lowest carbon footprint of wasted and stranded assets. And so we're always looking for that blend. And I think that that's a very key element in our analysis. I also just want to follow up. He mentioned about how choosing not to allow Bitcoin mining to get power. As a power guy, that's redlining. And redlining, in my book, is a really serious, almost legal constitutional challenge. The idea of utilities is everybody has the same access to the power. The last time we redlined, does anyone know? Redlining occurred in the South, when the southern utilities would not bring power to black communities. And we stepped in with the TVA and other federal programs to stop that. So when you start to say for a legal business that you can't have access to power, to me that is a very, very dangerous thing to go down that path.
Do we get political? Let's get political. There's an election, in case you didn't know, soon here in the US. And there's a view that if Donald Trump becomes president, that's more friendly for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. There isn't too much known about Kamala Harris's view on digital assets. I think we can say that. So is it that simple? Is it that binary? It's A or B, or is it a bit more nuanced?
I think it's much more nuanced.
Yes.
And I think, look, I think the big change is that Bitcoin mining is now a major political contributor into the elections, as it should be. It has a voice, and I feel that whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they all acknowledge equally that this is an industry that has come of age, and that we want to be able to treat it as an industry that has come of age, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Final words on that?
Yeah, I'll say I used to work at the Department of Energy under President Trump, even though I'm, for disclosure, a bleeding heart liberal from New York. I don't think, as Chris kind of pointed out, that the industry has reached maturity, right? There's nothing you can do to stop or eliminate the industry. What I do want to encourage any lawmakers, policymakers, any election officials, any campaigners that might listen, is there's an opportunity here to use this technology to advance the energy transition. You could think about curtailments. You could think about buyers of first resort or clean, firm power generation. You could think about climate financing tools. You could think about renewable energy market development, through instruments that are maybe Bitcoin related or Bitcoin tied. I don't want to miss the opportunity to use the technology for advancing the energy.
And you're confident under both potential administrations that'll happen?
Yeah, and actually, so Vice President Harris just about 2 days ago made her first explicit comment on digital assets. She said she wants to promote the responsible innovation of digital assets. President Trump has been sort of very, very pro of the industry. Again, I don't think it matters too much in the adverse. I don't think that any administration can do too much to inhibit the industry. What I do think is that there's, again, a missed opportunity if we don't take advantage of it.
Just before we go, yes or no answer, will Bitcoin be at 100,000 at the end of the year?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Come on, be brave. Will it be at 100,000 at the end of the year?
Yeah.
Good answer.
I'm either right or I'm wrong. You know?
Yeah,
Can't hurt.
We'll hunt you down if you're wrong, especially if we invest on your note. This is
Not
not
investment
advice.
advice.
This is not advice. We're just having fun. Big round of applause. Great chat. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.